Ethics Commission. Roll call, Commissioner Lee.
Here.
Commissioner Ambrose.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Gray.
Present.
All 5 members are present today. Agenda item number 2, public comment on matters appearing or not appearing on the agenda.
Commissioners, Ray Hartz, directors. I'm sorry, can I get the overhead? Good afternoon, Commissioners. Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government. A report of the Civil Grand Jury of the City and County of San Francisco entitled San Francisco's Ethics Commission, the Sleeping Watchdog, reads in part as follows. Quote, because of the Ethics Commission's lack of enforcement, no city employee has been disciplined for failing to adhere to the Sunshine Ordinance. The Commission has allowed some city officials to ignore the rulings of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force. I know this from experience, at least to this point in time, due to the 36 orders of determination I hold finding years of violations without any being enforced. Now, it doesn't mean they weren't effective. In most cases, I got the things eventually that I wanted, but we continue to still have resistance and people who just basically say, middle finger to the Sunshine Ordinance. And it's hypocritical because it's on every meeting agenda, know your rights under the Sunshine Ordinance, but if you try to act on those rights, you are completely ignored by all of these different, look at the bodies that are on there. Just about everybody in the city. Second thing here is, and one thing I'll say about this is kind of like President Trump right now and Nancy Pelosi's comments about he'll be impeached forever. He may be found not guilty or not found guilty by the Senate, but the bottom line, he is only the 3rd president of the United States who has actually been impeached, and that will never go away. So those people who were all found in violation of the ordinance, that will not change. Okay. Second thing I'd like you to consider today is this from the Good Government Guide, laying out the roles of commissioners, and it reads in part as follows. When acting as a quasi-judicial capacity, members of boards and commissions function like judges. Thus, they must take care to ensure the parties appearing before them receive due process. Now, look at my past record. I've got over 36 orders of determination. A number of those have come to this, and not one, as the Ethics Commission found, worth supporting. And the bottom line is not only did they find them not worth supporting, what they did is actually undermine them by saying the task force got it wrong. So they devalued what I had gotten. Would anyone on this commission like to handicap my chances today?
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ellen Li Zhao. I am a public employee, and I am a union delegate for government employees. We have 32,000 government employees in San Francisco. I am also the Director of Public Relations for California Civic Grand Jury, the San Francisco chapter. I have been coming to you ethics commissions for the last 4 years. 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019. The last time I was in here was December 20th, 2019. I came to you report many issues about possible government corruptions and election fraud. As you remember, I was one of the 8 candidates running for San Francisco mayor in June 2018. I was also, through the process, I was not allowed to join many of the forums, debates, events in public places, in City Hall, public libraries, public parks. I was also one of the 6 candidates for San Francisco mayor for November 2019, which is 2 months ago. I was bullied by many of the Democratic leaders. Many of the campaign billboards that I have and posters were illegally removed by the Democratic leaders, including the mayor's representative and board of supervisors and many of the electoral officials who are Democrats. And I was publicly calling racist by all those Democratic leaders that endangers my family's life, my own life. I am here today to let you know that I am a conservative Republican. I care about my city, San Francisco. I have been coming to you about possible corruptions within the electoral officials through the election fraud. For San Francisco election records in 2018 and 2019, because I run through the process, we found 150-year-old, we have 2 voters, 150 years old, 3 voters, 136 years old, 1 voter, 119 years old, 659 voters, 100 to 109, we have 247 voters. That means many of those dead people, they are no longer alive in this world, continue to vote in San Francisco. San Francisco is in many of the violations. According to the United States Constitution, Article 6, it says clearly our law, the supreme law of the land is the Constitution. The sanctuary city that San Francisco created is directly violate our rights. It's called treason. And we have many of the problems going on with the city that we have no rule of law in San Francisco that is protecting American people. Many of the people, like the homeless people, suffering, dying on the street, car break-in every day, crimes non-stopping daily, and we lost our quality of life. And you, the ethics commissions, I believe that you sign up to do something, and you are guys judges and lawyers and attorneys, and if you do not do anything, maybe it's about time to think about 2020. Think about what you want to do for yourself and for the city. And for public record, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Agenda item number 3, draft minutes for the Ethics Commission's December 20, 2019 regular meeting. Excuse me.
I'll move the minutes.
The second, all in favor?
Aye.
The minutes are approved unanimously. Agenda item number 4, election of Ethics Commission officers for 2020.
Thank you, Chair Chu. Item 4 is on the agenda to provide for the election of Ethics Commission officers for this year. The bylaws, as you'll recall, under Article 4, Section 1, provide that each year the Commission elects officers for a 1-year term of service. And they also provide that no office holder may serve for more than 2 consecutive 1-year terms. The memo before you provides some background on the service tenures of both the current chair and the vice chair, responsibilities of the chair and the vice chair. And this item's been agendized to allow for the commission, if it would like to, at this month's meeting, take action to elect officers for the coming year of terms starting on March 1st, continuing through the end of February 2021. The process that's outlined in the on the memo is the process that has been used customarily by the commission, and that is that the chair will open nominations for the chair, and any commissioner who wishes to nominate a candidate will state the name of that person. If the person agrees to run, then that person is nominated. When there are no further nominations and following any public comment that might be received, then the nominations are closed by the chair and a roll call vote is taken in which each commissioner states the name of the nominee for whom he or she is voting. If no nominee receives 3 votes, the commission can have further discussion and proceed to another vote. And the process then repeats until one nominee has received 3 or more votes. That process is the same for the office of vice chair, so I won't repeat it, but they are both outlined in detail on page 2 of the memo. So I wanted to just provide that context for those who may be following along and haven't yet read it, and as well as to refresh the memory of the commission.
Thank you. So I will now open the nominations to my fellow, commissioners.
I'd like to make a nomination, please. I would like to nominate Commissioner Ambrose to serve as chair in the upcoming term. And I would accept that honor, provided you all agree to help me do that.
Are there any further nominations? Okay. Ms. Pelham, could you take the vote, please?
Would we like to take public comment
Oh,
first?
yes. I'm sorry, public comment.
I personally went to many times for the election commissions. And many of the things that is not up to date in the website, and many of the things that we, the public, addressed was not addressed. I said it earlier, dead people continue to vote. We have 93,000 voters inactively still in the voters' roll. If you appoint this person in here and this person, she or he or whatever, do nothing, what's the point to appoint somebody? And San Francisco has been illegally operated for 45 years. I said that it's because I studied the law and realized that San Francisco, it's only one-party rule, Democrats for 45 years. If you appoint somebody else, wouldn't you be consider other parties, conservatives, Republicans, nonpartisans, libertarians, and independent, any other party other than Democrats? If you continue to appoint people that are Democrat, San Francisco is not going to recover nothing. We will continue the public. The election fraud is ongoing. The election office did nothing, and your commissioners do nothing, and the election commissions will not do a thing. So what's the point to appoint people other than having a title and show people that you have a title? If you want to help San Francisco, save us. We have so many homeless people are dying on the street, so many dead bodies picked up by public health. I am a public health worker for the government, and I feel ashamed about San Francisco with so much money that we are not able to help people and continue dying on the street overdose. I'm asking you, all of you, because you have a law background, attorneys, judges, people are reasonable. Help save San Francisco. Appoint somebody who are non-Democrats, who are loving San Francisco and willing to serve from their heart. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on the nomination for chair for the upcoming term? Okay, there being none, Ms. Pelham?
Okay, with the nominations closed and public comment received then, if we will do a roll call vote alphabetically, and if each commissioner could please state the name of the person for whom they wish to cast a vote for chair, the role of chair. Commissioner Ambrose.
Yeah, I always have that A, I have to go first. So I will vote for myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Chu?
Commissioner Ambrose.
Commissioner Ambrose, thank you. Commissioner Gray?
Commissioner Ambrose.
Commissioner Ambrose. Commissioner Lee?
Commissioner Ambrose.
Commissioner Lee votes for Commissioner Ambrose as well. And Commissioner Smith?
Commissioner Ambrose.
With 5 votes in the affirmative for Commissioner Ambrose is elected chair-elect for a term beginning March 1st.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Okay.
And if the current chair would like to open nominations for vice chair for the coming year.
I would like to open up nominations for the vice chair position.
And if I may, I'd like to nominate Commissioner Lee.
Commissioner Lee, do you accept the nomination and be willing to serve? Okay. Call for public comment. Oh, I'm sorry, are there any other nominations before I cut anyone off? Public comment.
My name is Ellen Lee Zhao, ELLENLEEZHOU. The purpose I'm coming in here, and I will be continue to coming in here when I have the time. I know you guys plan ahead, it's going to switch in the morning. I will try my best to come here on behalf of the people in San Francisco. Whoever you nominated today and whoever gonna accept the nomination as commissions, They have to have the heart and the time and energy to really serve according to what the bylaw says. Just like me, I am a public government employee. I am a social worker. I obey the law. I follow the direction. I deliver quality of life to my patients and clients. Same thing, I sign up for civic grand jury, San Francisco chapter. I do government investigation. I do government investigation for improvement because I sign up for it. So if you sit in here every month, once a month, and sign up for something, and you nominate it for somebody else to do something else, it is your duty to follow up, to really follow the good government conduct. Earlier, the gentleman was saying in here, we, the government, have good government conduct, Sunshine Ordinance, and Brown Act legislations. But the people that you guys sitting in here, I don't know what else to say other than urge you to have a heart for San Francisco so we can save the city, that we do not need to see the homeless people as dying on the street. We don't have to see the cop break in every day more than 100 cars. And many people don't even report anymore. And we don't have to see all this corruption that we're seeing, that the dead people are still voting in San Francisco. And we don't have to see the Ethics Commission that we reported to them and then say, the record has been missing. It never existed before. Even we have 6 people reported in person with audio tapes. And that tells us San Francisco is dying because of the people. You sign up for something that you're not standing up for the United States Constitution. I'm asking you, please have a heart for San Francisco and save San Francisco from everything that we're going through right now. I live in San Francisco. I work in San Francisco. We do not have to suffer like we suffer. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on the vice chair nominations? No? Ms. Pelham?
Seeing no more public comment and the nominations closed, we'll do a roll call vote again alphabetically, and if each commissioner could state the name of the person for whom they are casting a vote for vice chair for the coming year. I'll start with Commissioner Ambrose.
Commissioner Lee has my vote.
Okay, Ambrose, Commissioner Ambrose votes for Commissioner Lee. Commissioner Chu.
Commissioner Lee has my vote as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Gray. Commissioner Lee noted. Thank you. Commissioner Lee.
I guess I'll have my vote too.
Okay. And Commissioner Smith.
Commissioner Lee.
Thank you. With all 5 members voting to elect Commissioner Lee as the vice chair for the coming term, starting March 1st, that election is closed. And congratulations, Commissioner Lee. Thank you.
Congratulations to the commission chair-elect and vice chair-elect.
Yeah, and I did want to just take a moment. We should probably do something more formal and celebratory to thank Dana Chu for her service. I came onto the commission after she had just recently been elected chair in the middle of a very difficult legislative process on the Anti-Corruption and Accountability Ordinance, and she saw that through the adoption and the implementation, the regulatory amendments that were necessary, and then in the past year, the comprehensive review of the campaign public finance process with similar code amendments and regulatory implementation. I really appreciate your attention on all of the enforcement issues, on bringing forward information from the Ethics Commission website, the dashboard, bringing people in to educate us about that, about our relationship with other city departments. And I hope to maybe not do as much momentous legislative process as you are. I'm hoping to focus on implementing some of the things that we've just recently put on the books. And I think with the 2020 elections, we'll have a good trial run this year. But I really want to thank you and appreciate your leadership. And we'll count on you to help do the right thing.
Thank you. Those are very kind words. And I feel like that the credit really goes to staff and to the engaged members of the public for their passion and commitment and input into the whole process. I think it takes a village, and I'm happy to contribute where I can. So, and
Yeah.
I'll continue to support both of you in your efforts as we take this work forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Counting on it.
So agenda item number 5, the show cause hearing in the matter of Ray Hartz versus President Norman Yee, Sunshine Ordinance Task Force File Number 19042.
Thank you, Chair Chu and Commissioners. Just a brief introduction to tee up this item for you today. So I think you all know this item regards a referral from the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force, which they sent to the Commission on October 22nd. And we had endeavored to hold this show cause hearing at the November meeting, which the regulations would have required, but the chair continued the item at the request of one of the parties. The referral before you is Task Force File Number 19, I believe it's 042. And that file includes an order of determination that the task force issued in a matter in which Ray Hartz brought a complaint against Board President Norman Yee. In that order of determination, the task force makes clear that they found that President Yee had violated 2 provisions of the Sunshine Ordinance. One is Section 16, which governs the minutes of the meeting of a policy body. The other is Section 31, which provides that elected officials must administer and coordinate the implementation of the Sunshine Ordinance for their respective offices. So the task force referred eventually that order of determination over to the Ethics Commission after it determined that President Yee had declined to implement the task force's order of determination. So the posture of a situation like this is that when a respondent fails to comply with an order of determination that the task force has issued, the task force can refer that order to the Ethics Commission for enforcement, because the Sunshine Ordinance provides that although the task force can review complaints and make determinations, the Sunshine Ordinance does not provide enforcement power to the task force, but provides for a separate mechanism, which would be that the task force can refer matters to other bodies that do have enforcement power. Pursuant to that, the Ethics Commission and the task force negotiated a subset of the enforcement regulations that governs how the Ethics Commission handles situations in which the task force has made a referral of this kind. And the cover memo that staff provided to this item summarizes and explains how those regulations would operate here. But briefly, as a reminder to commissioners, you today, if you find it appropriate to do so, can defer the factual findings of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force with respect to this file number, but you need not defer to the legal conclusions that the task force made. The regulations provide that you offer de novo review with respect to any legal conclusions. Both parties are present today. Mr. Hartz and a representative from the Board of Supervisors are here. Each of those parties will have 10 minutes to present any argument or evidence that they wish to present. They can reserve 3 minutes for rebuttal. The regulations do provide that they may also call witnesses, but in any event, if either of the parties introduces new evidence today that was not before the task force previously, an option that you retain is to remand the matter back down to the task force, because the task force plays the role of the primary fact finder in a situation like this. After you have heard the arguments and before or after public comment, which is required for this item, you must deliberate in public, and you must base your determination about whether the respondent has violated the Sunshine Ordinance on the entirety of the record before you. If you find that the respondent has violated the Sunshine Ordinance, you may issue declaratory relief and you may issue injunctive relief, but you may not, we may not assess financial penalties against a respondent for a Sunshine violation. And then finally, if the respondent, as is the case here, is an elected official, a department head, or what is called in the law a managerial city employee, you might consider whether you think the respondent committed that violation willfully, because the Sunshine Ordinance provides that when a respondent in those 3 categories commits a willful violation, it will be considered official misconduct. So if you were to find not only today that the respondent violated the Sunshine Ordinance but did so willfully, then you would direct staff to subsequently refer that matter over to the appointing authority for consideration of whether to institute official misconduct proceedings. And then finally, whatever the commission decides today, if you bring a decision instead of remanding, your decision will be considered at the end of the administrative process. It will be a final adjudication of this matter, at which point the parties would have recourse only by virtue of a writ to the Superior Court. So I think we'll hand it over to the complainant, the petitioner in this matter, who's Mr. Hartz.
And I would appreciate if you could set the time to 7 minutes, because I do intend to reserve time for rebuttal. This is the order of determination. It is in your packet that we're talking about today. This is the 12th time the task force has ruled similarly on various other complaints. Going first to the question as to why, that Ms. Calvillo has raised as to why this is against Norman Yee, was laid out in the introduction, in the fact that elected officials and others are responsible for seeing that the Sunshine Ordinance is obeyed. Ms. Calvillo, as you see, has been found multiple times in violation, and she has simply refused to do anything. In fact, this is the first time I believe she has ever shown up at any one of the hearings. She sends someone else who makes excuses, and all of the excuses that she put in her letter are things that she has presented to the task force almost on every similar occasion. And also, if you look at that list, you will see that the Ethics Commission is on there twice, as well as the San Francisco Public Library, and they raised the same objections. Well, we can't do it for this reason or that reason. The clerk of the board has this on her website. San Francisco Charter Section 2108 states that the Board of Supervisors will liberally provide for the public's access to their government, meetings, documents, and records. And that's what we're talking about here. Ms. Calvillo has raised a number of times that the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force has been inconsistent in their rulings, and she has misrepresented that case. Here is a letter that was sent out to all departments stating, very frankly, over and over, that the Sunshine Task Force said what the ordinance says is that if a 150-word or less summary is provided, it will be placed in the minutes. And they interpret in the minutes as in the body of the minutes, and they completely refute the idea that it can be attached to as a reference or an addendum or some other position. And I will give you an example why. On September 20th, here is the public comment record in the minutes of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. Now, if I hadn't highlighted my name there in the middle, how many of you would have ever found that name? And how many reviewers of this document would have ever been aware that I had made public comment and submitted that public comment in writing? Those same set of minutes had a hearing of the Committee of the Whole, and again, there, unless I had highlighted it, how many of you would have ever found the fact that I had submitted a 150-word summary, which was somewhere else in the minutes? And given that I had submitted 3 that same day, here's what you got at the end. 3 separate summaries. And anybody reviewing these records would be very hard-pressed unless they wanted to take a lot of time to figure out which of these was for which section of the agenda. They would have to go back and research. And I think this is really the intention that Ms. Calvillo has had, whether at the direction of the Board of Supervisors or on her own merit, to keep these things presented in a way where the public is much less likely to see it. You will also notice that at the top, It says the following information is provided by speakers pursuant to Administrative Code 6716. The content is neither generated by nor subject to approval or verification of accuracy by the clerk of the Board of Supervisors. Now, how many of you can honestly look at that and say if your summary of your free speech was there, that some people wouldn't look at that and say, gee, maybe this is a little questionable? It certainly isn't anything advocating it, and I think they should at minimum put a, here is a summary submitted by Mr. Hartz of his public comment. Now, as I've said over and over again, all of the other bodies who have gone through the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force proceeding now place my 150-word summaries along with those of other members of the public in the body of the minutes. The the Library Commission does, the Ethics Commission does, the Police Commission didn't have to even be taken to the task force. The Arts Commission didn't have to be taken to the task force. The Rent Board didn't have to be taken for the task force. They all placed them in the minutes. And for some strange reason, Ms. Calvillo keeps presenting the idea that the Board of Supervisors is different than every other body, including this one. And you can ask your executive director, you can ask her, where did the 150-word summary I submitted during public comment today go in your minutes? Like I said earlier, although they have not been enforced, they have been effective. And the only holdout is Ms. Calvillo. This is a free speech issue. It's the First Amendment. This is constitutionally protected political free speech. Obviously, it's political. It rises to the highest level of protection of any form of speech under our Constitution. It is protected by also the Brown Act, and it's protected by, in this case, the Sunshine Ordinance, which says, I have the right to submit a 150-word or less summary, which will be put in the minutes. And the reason I started doing this was because for years I went to the Library Commission meeting. They would dumb down my statements. They would summarize them in ways that were mischaracterizations, misrepresentations, and I finally got sick and tired of it and have gone through this process. And now every single body except the Board of Supervisors puts them where the task force has said repeatedly they should be.
Thank you.
Members of the Commission, Chair Chu, Angela Calvillo. I'm the clerk of the board for the Board of Supervisors. Director Pelham. Good afternoon. We're here today on behalf of the Board of Supervisors to attend to this complaint that's before the Commission. Specifically, the complaint is made out against Supervisor and President of the Board, Norman Yee. But I am here today because I believe that I am the appropriate person to actually address the issues here. If there is any doubt in that, the President has deputized me to represent him on the department's behalf. This particular complaint alleges that Mr. Hartz's 150-word summaries were placed in an addendum to the minutes. I will just indicate that Administrative Code Section 6716 states that the clerk or secretary of each board or commission enumerated in the charter shall record the minutes for each regular and special meeting of the board. So in this case, I am the appropriate respondent. Additionally, I will just add that Article 2 of the legislative branch indicates, this is the front page of the charter section, but charter section 2.117, offices of the Board of Supervisors, just indicates that the board does appoint a clerk, and the clerk shall have charge of its offices, its records, and its classified staff. So the charter authorizes me to handle the board's records. Additionally, Mr. Hartz indicated section 2.108 of the charter, that's the public's rights to know. We're very proud of that section. We have a huge respect for Chapter 67 and public access to our records and to the board offices, but that the clerk shall keep a permanent public record of the proceedings of the board showing all actions that were considered and taken. The text of the ordinances and the resolutions voted, the vote of each member of the board regarding any matter before the board. And so that is what we're talking about, the minutes. And so in your rather large packet, I would like to ask you to turn to page 389, which is mostly towards the back of the packet. And for the viewers watching on chapter 67, this is what shows up. Yes. Yes, sir.
Their packets appear to go only as far as page 211.
Page 211, which is page 201. So at the end, after in memoriams, we will adjourn each meeting. There being no further business before the board, we indicate the hour that the board adjourns. NB, note bene, which just means noted well. The minutes of this meeting set forth the actions taken by the Board of Supervisors on the matters stated, but not necessarily in chronological sequence. And then I indicate the date that the minutes have been approved by the board and my signature. The actions of the board are what my signature is attesting to. The very next page, Mr. Hart showed you, which is the section where we would place his minutes, which he read for you. I will not read it again. Essentially, I'm not vouching for the detail contained in the statement. But most importantly, I would like to share with you that we do provide a summary in the minutes. It is essentially a summary, the speaker's name, and then the print that he showed there. I'm not sure if you could actually see it on the television. It essentially put the page that you would be able to turn to where you would find the 150-word statement, which is this page right here. So any like-minded thinker looking for a statement from Mr. Ray Hartz, they would see a brief statement under public comment, and then the page number that they would need to turn to find the entirety of the 150-word statement. I will point out that the Board of Supervisors agendas, their packets can be very long. We oftentimes have large items, and when a member of the public could be thumbing through our agendas, looking for the items that come after public comment, depending on how much public comment is there, and depending on how many subsequent items fall after public comment, they can be very long. Land use items, committees of the whole, closed sessions, adoption without reference to committee matters. If a member of the public is not looking for Mr. Hartz's statement, and if we were required to put the entirety of the 150-word statement right under public comment, somebody looking for something that happened in the closed session would be flipping through several pages just to find out what had happened with that particular item's vote. So it's technically difficult for a member of the public looking after public comment for the votes if we were to list all 150-word statements. Right now, it's not a problem because Mr. Hart showed one particular addendum. It had 3 150-word statements on it. But one day, if we created a process where all 151-word statements were there and there were 40 people submitting them, I could see that happening. You put the word out on Fox News, and for some unfortunate situation that Fox News was upset about, they could get their entire customer base, client base, to send us 150-word statements, and we would be in a world of hurt trying to get people just to get through those statements, to get to the back end of the agenda. I would also like to just state, yes, Mr. Hartz has made several complaints against our department. We are hoping that there could be some relief from having to continually come to his hearings where we talk about the same issue. We are very concerned that the public get their 150 words out there, that we are hearing what the public is saying. We have multiple opportunities for the public to actually publish their 150-word statements. Not only would we be willing to put them in our agendas at this section of the agenda, we also have something called the communication pages, which we would be happy, which is on our website. And when a member of the public provides us a 150-word statement, oftentimes they do ask, put this in your agenda, and I would like it in your communication pages as well. So a like-minded thinker could actually go to not only our agenda, but to our website to find their 150-word statement. So it is our hope that, again, similar to the regular meeting of October 2017, the Commission held a show cause hearing. We did make a presentation. It was Mr. Eng, and I'm here today with Mr. Wilson Eng, who actually does attend these meetings for us. And at that time, the Commission unanimously passed that our office did not violate the Sunshine Ordinance and noted that there was no merit to Mr. Hartz's argument. We believe his complaint is without merit, again today, and ask that the Commission find no violation. We also ask that the Commission provide administrative remedy to adjudicate all duplicative complaints pertaining to the placement of the 150-word statements, summaries in the minutes. We do appreciate your time. Thank you kindly, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
Question to you, but have
Commissioner Gray.
other commissions and boards, are they putting these minutes, these 150-word statements in the actual minutes? Do we know?
Commissioner Gray, I can only speak to our commission's practice, and we have traditionally placed the 150-word statements in the minutes, in the flow of the minutes. We have not had a significant number of them, but we place them in that context.
Did you? Commissioner Ambrose?
I have maybe a question that might be for our enforcement staff or the city attorney, but I wanted to understand, Ms. Cavell, the request that you made at the end. I mean, I, as you know, was a city attorney for 34 years. I think one of the most difficult things is when there's disagreement within the city family. It's hard enough dealing with third-party lawsuits and the like, but it's the worst when there's some debate happening where people are looking at the same charter sections, the same Sunshine Ordinance sections, and coming to differing conclusions. And in particular, just to let everyone know, my inclination is, because I was in the city attorney's office, I do know and have read the analysis that the city attorney provided, and while it may easily be said that reasonable minds have differed about what in the minutes, does in the minutes mean this page that says meeting minutes with a subheading addendum, or does it mean some other section of the meeting minutes before your signature? And I can understand why the Ethics Commission and certain other commissions would reasonably agree and incorporate the 150 words within the body of their minutes, because our minutes are 3 pages long. I also understand, as somebody who's done legislation before the board for 30 years, that finding things in the board's agenda is a nightmare, and that it would be within your charter duties to reasonably decide how you wanted to organize the flow of information. But what I didn't understand is you'd ask for certain relief about other things that I'm not sure are before this commission, and I don't know that I understand what our responsibility would be and how that might be before us.
Thank you for your comments, Commissioner Ambrose. I think Chapter 67 of the Administrative Code, we honor that chapter and respect when a member of the public might be in need of something and are confused about how to obtain it, we will bend over backwards to help them understand what it is they're trying to achieve and get them to the end game. When a member of the public, in this case Mr. Hartz, just views this subject differently than we do, he is continuing to create complaint after complaint after complaint of the same subject. Now he's moved on to the board president. Next, it's going to be the Board of Supervisors as a whole. Without any of the facts, underlying facts changing. And so my desire, it's a rarity, but there are a few individuals who can continue to make the same complaints over and over again, even after a body like the task force or your body has decided in the opposite direction than what Mr. Hartz would like to do. We are concerned about repeated complaints where my staff's time, we have a small department, we have a lot of work to do, and when Mr. Eng continues to go to these meetings after hours, just for the task force to make the same decision, although they have decided in our favor in the past, it just depends on who's on the task force. It's just, we would love some kind of relief for complaints, limit them to like 5 times a year, or once the Ethics Commission has made a determination in a particular section that there be something that this is distributed to the departments, that you can handle it this way or you can handle it that way, in which case it would not allow a complaint to continually be made again and again when the outcome is just going to be what it has been.
All right, thank you. I think I understand, and I do surmise that may well require some further research and or a legislative solution that may not be within our jurisdiction today, but now I understand what you want. Thank you.
Ms. Calvillo, we have a couple more questions. Commissioner Smith?
Yes, as you know, I'm fairly new to the commission, so this is my first encounter, although I have gone back to 2011, which I think were the first of the papers on this subject, and looked at them. I do know that there were many times in the court when things were added to orders, and it was simply accomplished by saying, here's an addendum, this matter is incorporated by reference as though fully set forth. I'm not aware of any legal challenge that we faced in doing that, and what I'm wondering is whether some sort of a qualifying statement like that might satisfy you and Mr. Hartz as well, by making it clear that these things are considered with the force and the respect as though they had been fully set forth in the minutes, and yet would not require the potential that you're concerned about with suddenly having a 200-page minute for an order. I don't know whether you've ever discussed those possibilities or sat down with Mr. Hartz to see if there was some sort of a compromise that could be reached.
Commissioner Smith, thank you for your recommendation. I am not opposed to that. I am more than happy to sit down with Mr. Hartz and show him some draft language that we could place there. Even the word addendum, I'm not wedded to. That was just a word that was on the fly recommended to us, not by the city attorney's office, but by an individual in my office who no longer works with us.
It's a good word.
So, okay, so we're happy to work with Mr. Hartz on that, and so I'll take your advice.
Question more
Sure,
than I'm advising.
I'm not opposed to it. Thank you.
Thank you. And my question, Ms. Calvillo, is that in your mind, whether it's called an addendum or an appendix, but that by including that at the end of the minutes, in your view, though, it is part and parcel of the minutes, so that for purposes of the legal requirements, that the public comment therefore is in the minutes.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, Commissioner Chu, Chair Chu. So, thank you.
Thank you.
That's the bottom line here for me. But I'm still amenable to tweaking it further so that the parties are satisfied.
Thank you. Any further questions for Ms. Calvillo? Yes. Mr. Hartz, you have your 3 minutes of rebuttal.
Isn't it supposed to be them first and then me?
She,
Chair Chu, I did not reserve time, and nor do I need it. Thank you kindly.
thank you. All right.
Members of the Commission, Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government. So I now have gotten confirmation from Ms. Calvillo's own mouth of what I have always believed but could never ascertain. She is not opposed to my 150-word summaries. She is opposed to any citizen of San Francisco having the option of putting their 150-word summary in the minutes. In other words, she is adamantly against free speech, and she has decided that whatever she can do or will be able to do to put it somewhere where it would be less likely to be seen, then she will do that. Now, she has not been willing to talk about this at all. She has never even come to one of the Sunshine Task Force meetings. She always sends someone else who really can't answer why they're so determined that my 150-word summary should be elsewhere than where the task force has ruled a dozen times that it should be. And this idea that Fox News will put something on and all of a sudden we'll get all these summaries, you have to make the public comment at the Board of Supervisors meetings and then submit the 150-word summary. So unless all these Fox News people are going to come and sit for several hours, and if you look at the Board of Supervisors agenda, there's no certain time for public comment. If you want to make public comment to the Board of Supervisors, you have to plan to put aside an entire day, because it could be, and I've had it as close as 45 minutes after the beginning of the meeting and as long as 8 hours later. And how many people in the public can afford to take time off from their life to take an entire day just to speak to the Board of Supervisors one time? And again, we're talking free speech. And Ms. Calvillo has failed to show a compelling state interest. To answer to Commissioner Gray's question, everybody that I have submitted these statements to puts them in the body of the minutes, exactly where they appear as any item would in the flow of the meeting. The Library Commission, the Ethics Commission does, the Arts Commission does, the Police Commission does, the Rent Board does. So yes, everyone, and that's what I keep getting confused about. Ms. Calvillo seems to be presenting the case that for some reason her minutes are completely different from all the other minutes run by every board and commission in this city. And for some reason, she is the only one. Now, you can ask your executive secretary, has there been a problem with putting my 150-word summary in the body of the minutes? And I think her answer would be no. And it would get the same answer from all the rest. There has been no identified problem. And all Ms. Calvillo is doing is making up the worst possible scenario to come up with something that will stick to the wall and justify her not putting those in. And I mean, all you need to do is look through the 200 pages here and you will see repeatedly the number of times the task force had done. Now, if I had gone to the task force a dozen times and they had found that I was wrong a dozen times, then her idiotic idea about somehow getting declarative relief, does that mean if she sees a bank robber and they rob a bank 5 times, that after that they can rob a bank as many times as they want and nobody can file a case against them?
Thank you. Okay. Call for public comment.
Good morning, Commissioners and Director Pelham. I'm Dr. Derek Kerr. I commend and support Ray Hartz for pursuing inclusiveness and equity in the matter of including public comments within meeting minutes. Ms. Calvillo's emphasis on the number of times that Mr. Hartz has raised this issue indicates that his persistence was somehow unreasonable or vexatious. In fact, the pursuit of fairness and justice usually follows this repetitive path because power concedes very little without demand after demand and year after year. The Board of Supervisors has two options. It can integrate public comments next to the agenda item that they address, or it can segregate them into an appendix. Choosing the latter, the back of the bus option, tells us that our comments are unworthy, that we are outsiders. It takes thoughtful effort to attend government meetings and to craft a 150-word public comment. Why not encourage thoughtful public participation by including our comments where they belong, in the body of the minutes next to the item that we're addressing? Relegating our comments to an appendix marginalizes and buries public input. It conveys disrespect for the folks that government is supposed to serve. And worse, it fuels reciprocal disrespect. Isn't it unethical to undermine good governance by demeaning public engagement? The Ethics Commission could convey that message to the Board of Supervisors and emphasize that the spirit of the Sunshine Ordinance is just as important as the technical legalities. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Hi, Wilson Ng, Deputy Director of Operations for the Clerk of the Board. I'd like to present myself as a member of the public to just correct a couple of inaccuracies that I've heard in the complaint and statement today. So there has been several precedents that have been set, both with the Ethics Commission, inconsistently with the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force, and also City Attorney's opinion has been well documented in the Good Government Guide, as well as a directive to all city departments. So the task force has previously referred similar allegations of violations of Section 67.16 regarding the 150-word summary placement, all from Mr. Hartz. There's several past complaints that have been filed, numerous future complaints that have been filed. This exact same complaint that we're talking about today, 19042, there's also 19043 that is down the pipeline that is exactly the same, that is addressed to Ms. Calpio instead of Supervisor or President Norman Yee. So I want to direct you to page 8 of the agenda, which is the memo that we submitted, which we cite several references to precedent. Two of them was Ray Hartz versus the Public Library, Luis Herrera, ethics complaint number 03120402 and 01130307. On both of those complaints that were considered by the Ethics Commission, the Ethics Commissioners found for the city librarian, stating that, and I quote, "The minutes provided were paginated as a single document, including the addendum and the task force cannot add or imply the words, quote, in the body of the minutes into the Sunshine Ordinance." And Section 67.16 of the admin code specifically states that, the last sentence of the first paragraph, any person speaking during a public comment period may supply a brief written summary of their comments, which shall, if no more than 150 words, be included in the minutes, not interpreted as the body of the minutes. So if we were to submit, the way the minutes are paginated is if there's January, February, March, April, May minutes that are all consecutively paginated. So, for example, if there was So the first set of minutes for the year would be paginated, for example, 1 to 20. Then the second or the minutes for the board would be paginated 21 and forward. And so at the end of the year, they're all bound together as what we call the journals of proceedings, and it's essentially all one document. They're all the minutes. It doesn't matter where it doesn't matter the header, body, footer, appendix. It's the minutes. So I just wanted to make that clarification. Thank you. And then I also want to refer you to the memo submitted for additional precedent. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners?
I want to say that I thought the evidence actually that Mr. Hartz provided showing that the minutes, the body of the minutes as we're calling them, does identify all of the public speakers with a acknowledgement of the sort of essence of what their testimony was, and a specific page reference to the addendum. You know, going to the other speaker, I don't see that as disrespect or failure to acknowledge. I mean, they're there with as much fullness as a reference to something that a supervisor or a department head would have said. I mean, the challenge of taking what can sometimes be a 6-hour meeting and reducing it down to a memorandum, which from an attorney research point of view, I've always taken as essentially just I just want to find a keyword, a reference, so I can get back to the right section of the SFG TV video so I can really see what did people say and how did they say it. So I just want to make it clear that while I do come to the same conclusion that the city attorney did, that when the voters adopted the Sunshine Ordinance and they wanted the opportunity for 150 words to be incorporated in the minutes, that left the discretion to the clerk of the board as where in the minutes to put those 150 words, notwithstanding the task force inclination to see it in an alternative light. But in saying that, I want to be clear that I don't think that the board is trying in any way to suppress free speech or to deny Mr. Hartz an opportunity to be heard. I really sincerely believe that, so I just wanted everyone to know that. Anyway. No, I'm not supposed to, apparently, once the commissioners start to deliberate, but happy to hear from you personally if you have a clarification. But anybody?
I would concur with Commissioner Ambrose's sentiments. I think that the 150-word summary is contained in the minutes. It's a matter of location, and that the reference in the agenda item where it lists all of the public commenters and the gist of their comment, as well as a reference to the page number in the addendum where the written comment can be seen, I think it satisfies the legal requirements of including the public comment in the minutes.
I would concur with what the chair just said. Without discussing the policy issues or the free speech or constitutional issues, from the standpoint of simply legal interpretation, I don't think the code section requires that it be in the body. The code section simply says what it says, and if there's an argument to be made, truly, it seems to me it's in the way the code was written. And the code should have said what it meant or been more specific if there was a... Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't policy reasons to discuss, and apparently the other commissions have decided there's certainly no reason not to put it in the body according to the code. But I find it difficult to see a legal violation, simply from the standpoint of legal interpretation and code interpretation in the way it's written.
Commissioner Lee,
I concur.
Commissioner Gray?
If I were Mr. Hartz, I'd want to see it right where it should be, in sequential order, but the statute doesn't say that, so I don't think we can find a violation. I mean, I agree, it makes sense to me to have it in sequential order as opposed to having to find an addendum and search, but the statute is just, it's vague. So I don't think we can find a violation.
Because the task force shall decide what the policy is, and they have decided it, and they have issued memorandums saying what the policy is.
I think Commissioner Lee had a question, had a comment, but I would like to ask the city attorney in terms of reviewing questions of law, as that may have been interpreted by the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force. I believe that the commission can review the legal findings of the task force de novo.
That's correct, Chair Chu. As Jeff Pierce explained at the beginning, on questions of law, the commission does review de novo.
Thank you. Commissioner Lee.
Thank you. I think the commission had an early discussion regarding including the 150 word public comment in our own minutes. But I think that Fox News notwithstanding, I would love to see civic engagement in all aspects of government, and which means that it would be great if we have dozens and dozens of people commenting board proceedings or commission proceedings. And I think logistically, of course, I echo my fellow commissioners' comments that the public comment is included in the body of the public record, whether you include it in the specific item or put it as an addendum or what have you, but it is part of the public record, which is really important in respect to respecting the public's points of view and the right to speech. So my thing is, since there's no legal statute to require that the public comment be specifically placed within a certain body, and there's effort to show that any interested parties can say, hey, you know, how many people commented on this specific item, you can refer to page whatever. I think that would satisfy all parties. And I think that in terms of a public's right to engage, if I were a resident, I may not want to go through 200 pages of public comment to go to an item that I was interested in. But as long as I know if I want to read what people's been saying about a previous item, I could refer to a specific page, which I understand the Board of Supervisors has committed to do. So another comment I have is regarding the communication pages, the website that the Board of Supervisors have. I assume when people click on a certain item, then it would go directly to a specific page that would include public comments on that, or how does that go? I'm very low tech, so I have never used the web pages in the city before. So.
Wilson Ng, Deputy Director of Operations for the Clerk of the Board. It depends on how the communication is submitted. If it's just a general communication without reference to any particular live legislative item with no legislative file number reference, then there wouldn't be any linkage. However, if it is tied to a specific file number, it is searchable by that file number.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments from commissioners? Okay. So I would like to make a motion that the Board of Supervisors President Norman Yee did not, to find that the Board of Supervisors President Norman Yee did not violate Administrative Code Sections 67.16 and 67.31. and that the legal interpretation of this commission is that there's no legal requirement under the code that public comment be placed in the body of the minutes. A second from Commissioner Lee. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? None. The motion is carried unanimously.
Should have handicapped like that, I knew I would lose, because that's what you always do with sunshine law. Every single one, every single person. You deny every single one. How is that possibly a fair system?
Okay, agenda item number 6. Discussion and possible action on proposed bylaws amendment, Article 7, Section 4, to revise Ethics Commission regular meeting schedule effective April 2020.
Commissioners, item 6 is in your agenda packets to allow the commission to act on a proposed bylaws change that would change the regular meeting date of the commission from the third Friday of the month, beginning at 2 o'clock, change it to Friday mornings at beginning at 9:30 on the second Friday of the month. This was something the commission, you will recall, discussed last month, directed that a public notice be issued to enable the public to be notified of the potential bylaws change. We were able to distribute that along with the language of the bylaws change as required by the bylaws change process. And so the memo before you shows the dates that this would take effect. It is proposed to take effect beginning in April 2020. And so the commission, under the proposal before you, would be to continue the commission's current meeting schedule on the third Friday at 2 o'clock until the month of April 2020, at which point the commission would switch to a regular meeting date of a second Friday of the month beginning at 9:30 in room 400 rather than room 416. So that is the proposal. The attachment that is included in this memo depicts on a calendar so you and the public can see what those dates would be. And the meeting dates that would be adopted pursuant to this bylaws change, if the commission adopts, is shown on agenda item 6, page 2.
Commissioner Lee?
A question regarding the earlier starting time. I'd like to ask the executive director, is there anyone scheduled in the afternoon using that room? So right now we have this room forever, so we can meet until past midnight. But for the room 400 meetings in the future, do you know if there's any other commission meeting scheduled, say in the afternoons, that we would need to vacate this room?
Right. So would there be a stopping point or a limitation on the time that we have?
Hello, Commissioners. Gayatri here. I will have to check. Typically, the schedule of City Hall rooms are quite packed, so it is possible that there may be other meetings after our meeting.
Okay.
But typically, we book the room 1 hour before and after, so the room is blocked until 3:30 p.m.
Until
3:30 p.m.
From 9:30 to 3:30 p.m.
Yes, yeah. So we do have
the whole day.
At least.
Yes. Yeah. We have around roughly 5 to 6 hours. Yeah.
Thank you. Going to be chair. We're not going to be here for 6 hours. No.
May I ask, is there any objection received about this? I mean, there's been a notice, and I haven't heard anything here yet, but I guess we'll ask. But was there any mail or anything received in response to this that you're aware of?
I'm aware of one email that we received, a general comment saying that 9:30 in the morning might provide less opportunity for the public to engage than a Friday afternoon at 2:30.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Commissioner Ambrose?
I did just want to say, and I appreciate that we're deferring this changeover because of my schedule, but April 10th, is the beginning of both Passover and it's Good Friday. So on the chance that anyone already knows that they might have travel plans or something that weekend, and if we wanted to defer
Till May.
and stay with with the existing schedule, which would be the third Friday at 2 p.m. for April, just want to put that out there. It doesn't matter to me. My schedule's.
I think we didn't look at that. That's a very good point, that Friday, April 10th is Good Friday.
And the
beginning of Passover. So Commissioner Ambrose, are you suggesting that we start the new schedule at 9:30 on Friday, May 8th? Then I think
correct. And I guess since we've noticed this, I'm assuming we also have the right to make modifications to it as a proposed schedule. I know you had the proposed bylaw amendment had to be noticed, but since it has been noticed, we're able to tinker with it. Okay. All right. Yeah. Then I would recommend that we start the change in the schedule effective May for the May 8th meeting.
Any other commissioner comments or questions? No? Okay. Public comment?
Commissioners, Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government. I really don't think it matters when you meet. When I first started coming to these meetings more than a dozen years ago, they were held in the evening around 5 p.m. And there was usually about half the auditorium filled up with members of the public. Then you moved to a daytime and it went down to a few people. Now the only people who come to these meetings are people who have a matter before the body. And whether you intend it or not, and I really do think you intend it, your intention is to cut back on public participation, to put it at a time when normal working people won't be able to attend, or families who have to find child care needs can't attend. I mean, do you want the public here or not? I don't think you do, because every time you change when you meet, it is to a time which is more hostile to the public being able to attend and participate. And very frankly, I see why. The public has finally caught on to something that I've known for quite a long time. You don't want their input. You don't give a damn about their input. And you're going to do whatever you need to hold these meetings in such a fashion, at such a time, as that the publics will be uncomfortable in attending, they will not be able to attend, and if they have something to say, any of the meaning of what they have to say before you will never make it into your minutes because they don't even know about my option of the 150-word summary. And I think that is basically the problem with this Ethics Commission that I have seen over the years. You meet, and I don't know whose interest you serve, it's certainly not the ethics of this committee. I have never, ever seen you do anything except shuffle papers, rewrite the law, and the ethics in this city are absolutely no better. In fact, they are worse than they were when I first started coming a dozen years ago. And you can sit there and go, oh, no, that's not true, that's not. Hey, one of your last presidents resigned. Your former commission member, Judge Kopp, went into the newspaper and said how ineffective and how useless this body was after he'd been serving on the body. So it isn't just my opinion that you're a worthless waste of time. I think the general public has gotten to that same thing, and even some of your own members. One of your past presidents got so disgusted, he quit. He resigned in the middle of the meeting. I mean, what kind of a body does it take to act in ways that someone who is a law professor will get up so disgusted and say, I quit?
Thank you. Any other public comment? No. Okay. Or other comments or questions from commissioners?
The only thing I wanted to say is that I actually think that the purpose of moving it to 9:30 is with the hope that we will be able to get more people to attend, that having a meeting at the end of the day on a Friday when people often have plans for that evening or the weekend, there are a lot of people who do work, 412s who might be able to come in, and I think we're open to looking at alternative times. It is a struggle apparently because of the limited room availability. I've seen this before with other commissions trying to find a time that is most available to the public, but I do want to say that is our reason, is to find a time that will work for people.
I would concur with my fellow commissioners, Commissioner Ambrose's comments. So I would make a motion to amend Article 7, Section 4 of the bylaws to read as follows. Effective in May 2020, regular meetings shall be held on the second Friday of each month, except in the case of a city-recognized holiday or the unavailability of a televised meeting room, when the meeting shall be held on the closest practicable day. Unless otherwise noted, meetings shall be held at City Hall, 1 Dr. Carlton B. Goodlett Place, Room 400, in the City and County of San Francisco, beginning at 9:30 a.m. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is approved unanimously. Agenda item number 7, discussion and possible action on proposed amendments to regulations related to Article 3, Chapter 1 of the Campaign and Governmental Conduct Code.
Thank you, Chair Chu and Commissioners. I'm Pat Ford, Senior Policy and Legislative Affairs Counsel. Happy New Year to you. It's very good to see you again. You have a new meeting schedule, new leadership. I think you have a very good 2020 to look forward to. I'm glad to present this agenda item to you, and I hope it's the first of many agenda items this year that continue all the projects that you've been working on over the past number of months, and hopefully some new projects that we'll talk about maybe in the next agenda item. But anyhow, just like to start off by saying that. It's very good to see you. This agenda item we've talked about many times at many meetings, so I will be very brief, but I do want to give a quick intro on it for the benefit of anybody who's just joining this discussion now. This agenda item contains a set of regulations that would require that all city employees who are already required under the law to file the Form 700 Statement of Economic Interest do so using an online digital filing system. First, what is the Form 700? It's a form created by the state, by the Fair Political Practices Commission, and it's used by employees of state and local government, elected and appointed officials, all kinds of people in government across the state to disclose their personal financial interests. And there are a number of important reasons for that. Don't need to go into great depth about that right now. But essentially in San Francisco right now, officials such as yourselves or elected officials like members of the Board of Supervisors file electronically using an online filing system. However, employees like myself and thousands of other employees in the city file this form in a paper format, either with their department or with a related department, maybe a parent department. And that's created basically a two-tier system of disclosure where you have some people filing electronically with those disclosures being very easily accessible to the public, and then you have a much larger group of people filing on paper, a format that's less efficient for the filer and also less available to the public. So what these regulations that are before you today would do is to create a single uniform system of filing, all electronic, essentially to move everyone who's filing on paper into the existing electronic filing system that's already being used by officials in the city. purposes for that, as I just mentioned, easier filing experience and better availability of the information to the public. By way of background, I want to mention that these regulations have been noticed. They've been before the public for 10 days, so you can vote on them. And furthermore, as I've discussed at earlier meetings, staff assisted by the Department of Human Resources have already met with employee bargaining units. We've talked about this project of having employees file electronically. We've discussed the impacts of that, and we've explored some ways to help ease the transition, including training, written resources, and having employee bargaining units be more involved with departments during the biennial code review, which is a way for departments to go back and look at which employees are required to file. So the upshot is that the meet and confer process is concluded. The regulations have been noticed. You can vote on them and you can approve this today, should you so choose. But before I conclude, I do want to just mention to you that aside from the actual e-filing requirement, because that's only one of these regulations, the others kind of set up processes to make that to make it work. So you'll see in here that there are provisions that have the filer provide contact information to the filer's filing officer, that's so that the filing officer can set up the online account, basically get a username and password for the filer. And then there's a process for the filing officer to ask for that information. There's a deadline for that. Then there's a deadline for the filer to provide the information. Then there's a deadline for the filing officer to create the account and provide the login information. That's why this is a page and a half and not just one line. So I did want to explain that it's not so simplistic as just this requires e-filing. It also sets up an infrastructure for administration, which is necessary for any of these kinds of programs. So we believe that this is comprehensive of what needs to be in place in order for the Ethics Commission and all other departments to bring this project to fruition. And with that, I will answer any questions that you might have about the regulations or about this project generally.
Any questions from commissioners? I just had one question, Mr. Ford, and that is for the paper filers of the Form 700. Those are kept on file with their respective office, so their filing officer, and so as a result, they're not searchable from an online database standpoint, but from and after these implementing regulations. And January 1st, 2021, is that it? Next year?
Yes, that's
Everyone will
correct.
now be filing electronically.
That's correct. So to your question about how paper filed forms are available, all filers, employee filers, have a filing officer, typically another employee in their department, sometimes somebody in a department that is kind of a parent department to them. So if there's divisions or smaller departments within one larger department, sometimes they will file with, for example, the city administrator, if you're in a department that the administrator oversees. But yes, you're correct that once the employee files on paper, the filing officer has to keep track of the employee's compliance and report to us if there's non-compliance. And the paper Form 700 goes into a filing cabinet. And it's available. It is a public record, and it must be produced in full, unredacted form if it's requested. But that's the problem, is that it's not always clear to somebody what forms to request or where to go to get them. There's no one-stop shop for Form 700s. That's what this project would create. It would turn the existing Form 700 database into a comprehensive one-stop shop where you could get any Form 700 filed by any filer, employee, or official. And not only that, but it will allow you to search the contents of them. So you don't have to know the name of the employee whose Form 700 you want to view. You could search by the kind of interest. For example, you could search a particular company to see which employees or officials have a financial interest in the company. And I think that that aligns more with how people think about personal financial interests. They don't always know, I want to see Pat Ford's financial interests. They might think, I want to see anybody who has an interest in this parcel of property that's now coming up for an important vote. So I think that'll bring us closer to that model.
So then it would create a searchable database so that if a member of the public wanted to search for any planning commission employee or commissioner who has an interest in a real estate company, that could be the search parameters, and it would come up with names. But right now, it would only, it's a much smaller database to search.
That's
The
correct.
electronic
Yeah,
file.
and you could still do the kind of individual specific search that you can do now with Form 700s. Like if somebody really did want to know about my personal financial interests right now, they could request my paper Form 700. Under e-filing, they could still look up my Form 700 and they could see everything that I have an interest in. So that won't go away. But additionally, you will have this much more powerful tool of being able to search all the forms at once, which this is the future. This is the direction we're moving with all of our forms. So this is important to have this form be included with that kind of progress too.
Commissioner
Quick
Ambrose.
questions, hopefully. So just to be clear, this database will be all-encompassing for the city, so you don't need to know the name of the department. You'll just be able to do a name entry or something like that. Okay.
That's correct.
Larry Bush, in some comments that he submitted to us, raised some interesting questions that I'm going to want to follow up on. I can understand that we wouldn't necessarily want to modify the Form 700 because it is a standard form. I think it actually comes from the state, right? But that the cross-referencing other databases about statement of incompatible activities or various requests, I don't know if it's possible to have an opening page on there where you say, well, here's all this stuff, and if you wanted something that we also have a database on, you can go to these other links or places, so that there is some, whatever, just a footnote or a reference that will allow people to tie it all together. And then this is to the city attorney's office. He raised some questions about a conflict of between the code and state law. I don't know if you've seen any of these, since these were directed, these are actually comments that had come in 2018 that he's reissuing. So we don't need to follow up now, but I just want to get an answer to that, and if we need to come up with a solution to it, then we can work on that.
I can briefly address that. If you're referring to number 3 on the list, is that correct, Commissioner Ambrose?
I am, the section 84308 problem that he...
Yeah, so I think he's conflating two different things. He's conflating charitable contributions with campaign contributions, which are obviously two different types of payments, subject to different rules. And he seems to be confusing them as a single type of...
Okay. All right, I'll need to think about that. Understand if I read it with that. Okay. Thank you. I just didn't want to lose the thought because I'm still trying to understand all the moving parts. Anyway, thank you for...
Any other questions for Mr. Ford? No? Okay. Then I would move that we, oh, I'm sorry, public comment, yeah. Long week.
Commissioners, Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government. In management, I taught for the University of Hawaii for 14 years, and there's a principle called the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule, and it says 80% of what a body or an individual or a business does has very little impact or effect. 20% is high impact, high effect, and very important, and therefore, if logical, you would focus on the 20% that is important. I've often, over the years, said that basically the San Francisco Ethics Commission is like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. You basically don't do anything that actually makes the city any more ethical at all. I've called a number of times for any commissioner to point out one single thing that this Ethics Commission does that makes our politicians more honest, more open, more transparent, or anything else. All you have to do is look at the last case this body chose to deal with, that hearing regarding former Supervisor Mark Farrell, which you screwed up so badly that the only thing he could finally do was come to an agreement that he would pay a petty little fine, and he got away with it, which is one of the reasons former Commissioner Quentin Kopp resigned. So really, it doesn't make any difference what you do. In fact, I think what you do actually discourages people. I'm a member of Mensa, and I'll tell you, I've looked at the election laws, and I would have to be an insane person to want to run for anything in this city. You have so many convoluted rules and regulations that no normal human being can even understand them, let alone meet them. And the only cases you choose to go after where people violate them are little petty things where somebody owes the city $1,000 or $1,500. And those drag on for years and years and years. I haven't looked yet, but we're probably going to come to a point where we get to the cases, and the same cases that were there 3 years ago are probably still on the list. So you can sit here and you can, shuffle your papers and whatever. I think the Pareto principle as it applies to this body is the 99-1 rule. 99% of what you do doesn't mean jack. 1% is only meeting the legal requirements. And I really do regret the fact that I haven't had a chance to do my 150-word summaries today. And I guarantee you, starting next month, given that you're moving to an earlier time, I will devote every single Friday to come to every meeting.
Thank you.
Success.
Any other public comments? Okay. So I'd like to move to approve these proposed amendments to the regulations related to Article 3, Chapter 1 of the Campaign and Governmental Conduct Code.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion is approved unanimously.
Yeah, and thanks to staff for your work on this. I know with all the union meetings and explanatory conferences, it was a lot of work, but I think it'll be really helpful.
Okay. Agenda item number 8, discussion of monthly staff policy report.
Thank you, Chair Chu, Commissioners. Agenda item 8 is the staff policy report. And right now, the e-filing regs, really this project is kind of wrapping up on the policy side. At this point, now that you've approved the regulations, I'll be transmitting those to the Board of Supervisors today, where they will sit for 60 days. The board has the opportunity to veto them or call a hearing and or veto the regulations. If that doesn't happen, then they will go into effect in 60 days. But as you saw on that agenda item, there are different operative dates for the different parts of the regulations, with the e-filing starting in January 1 of next year, and some of those procedures starting in September. So this project will kind of drop into the background. I will be advising, but now that the meet and confer and the regulation process is concluded, really this project, along with the public financing review project, is in its final stages. So that is a good update. And I had originally forecasted bringing the policy plan to you this month. But after consulting with the commission leadership, I'm going to wait until a later meeting so that we can coordinate the policy plan with the change in commission leadership. So I hope that that is okay with you, and be glad to hear any feedback you have on that idea. I know that we've been talking about bringing this plan for a while, but I do want to do it at a time that that makes sense for everybody and that will be most effective for you. So do feel free to give me any feedback on that if you'd like. But I would like to also highlight some work that's going on office-wide that I'm also a part of, which is the biennial review of the Form 700 list. I do anticipate recommending this to you as a policy project for the next, really for the next year. This will probably end up being about a year-long process that involves our office, the city attorney's office, the clerk of the Board of Supervisors, and the Department of Human Resources, all of us working together to help departments review their lists of filers, which is required under state law every other year, and to, especially with the Department of Human Resources, facilitate involvement of any employee bargaining units that wish to be involved, that want to give feedback to departments about filers that they think shouldn't file or should file at a different disclosure category. So that's something that's going on now and really warrants our involvement for much of this coming calendar year. So aside from that, working with other folks in the office to identify areas that would be good candidates for policy projects, and hoping to bring that to you either at the next meeting or the one after that. But anyway, I will stop and turn it over to any questions that you have.
Actually, Mr. Frye, I had one question about the biennial review of Form 700 filer list. Is that, would the work be done in 2020 in order to update or revise the required list of filers to be ready for the 2021 filing?
That's correct. State law creates some deadlines, and essentially by, I believe it's the 1st of July, the Board of Supervisors has to send out a notice to all the departments telling them to start the review and provide the board with any changes to their filer lists. And then actually it's by March of next year that the ordinance has to be in effect. But I think traditionally, the city attorney's office has urged the city to complete that process much earlier, which I think is the right way to go. So typically that's been done in late summer or fall. This year, we're looking at really changing it a lot, moving it up to be much earlier. And in fact, the clerk of the board is hoping to send out a notice this month and to send out another notice in April. So the departments get 2 notices. They get them early. We're really hoping to get people thinking about this so early in the year that they have a meaningful time to really engage. And also, we're anticipating that because e-filing will start next year, that the employee unions will have maybe a greater interest this year to engage and to give feedback about who should be filing, since you'll have Form 700s more readily available that may incentivize them to try to pare down the list of filers. Remains to be seen, but that's part of why we're trying to move the process, or not move it, but start it earlier so that there's more time for that to happen.
That's always good to have more runway.
Exactly.
Comments or questions from commissioners? Okay. Public comment?
Commissioners, Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government. First, addressing the electronic filing of the Form 700, what difference does it make if you get all the Form 700s and you do nothing with them? I'll give you a perfect example. For 3 years, former city librarian Luis Herrera was receiving literally $5,000 or more a year from a group called the Friends of the San Francisco Public Library. And in each of those years, he filed a Form 700 saying he had not gotten anything. I brought it to this Ethics Commission, and former Director John St. Croix refused to deal with it. So I and 2 other members of the public took Mr. Herrera to the FPPC in Sacramento. They found him to have violated the law in a 3-year period, which is far back as they could go. They fined him a few $1,000s, and he was formed to put in new forms stating that he had gotten in each of those 3 years $5,000 from this group, and then lied under penalty of perjury, saying he had not. So you can get as many 700s and fill out as many sheets of paper, and you can kill as many trees as you want. But if you're not going to do anything with what you have, what difference? And I'll go back to the Mark Farrell case. Mark Farrell that dragged on for 3 years until finally it got to the point where they just said, they threw up their hands and said, well, this is so screwed up, there's really nothing we can do except bargain with him to pay I think it was a $30,000 or $35,000 fine. I'll bring it next time. And that was just, I think, 15% of what he was originally charged for. So you can fill out your paperwork and you rearrange it and whatever. All you do is make it difficult for people who want to run for public office here, and for citizens who are honest, which is 99.9% of our citizens who fill out their forms, only to send them in with people like former city librarian Luis Herrera, who was a crook. But you don't seem to care about that. Doesn't seem to, register on your radar at all. As far as the policy prioritization plan, like I said, I've been coming here a dozen years, and it doesn't matter who the staff is, doesn't matter who the executive director is. I really had high hopes for the current executive director because Mr. St. Croix was a crook. He was just, nothing but. And basically, I've been disappointed over and over because I don't think this Ethics Commission has any intention of ever doing anything to really affect the ethics of this city.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Being none, agenda item number 9, discussion of monthly staff enforcement report, including an update on various programmatic and operational highlights of the enforcement program's activities since the last monthly meeting.
Thank you, Chair Chu and Commissioners. So this month's report provides a highlight of one of the new protocols that we have implemented within the Enforcement Division. And again, by way of background, the goal of the Enforcement Division, something that we have spent a considerable amount of time over the course of the last 6 to 12 months evaluating, is how to improve the efficiency and the effectiveness of the work that the Enforcement Division does to implement the enforcement mandate that is assigned to the Commission. We have certainly heard the feedback of the public. We have heard the feedback of former members of the Commission and as well as current members of the Commission. But independent of that feedback, our division wishes, obviously, to increase its efficiency and effectiveness. One of the ways in which we have sought to do that is to diminish the amount of time that investigators or staff spend interfacing with complainants where it's clear to us at the outset that the complaint would not fall to the jurisdiction of the Ethics Commission. And this is a protocol that we described to you in a presentation, I believe in August of 2019, when we presented to the Commission an overview of process improvements that the division was undertaking at that time. So this particular protocol takes advantage or acknowledges a distinction that the Charter and the enforcement regulations provide between formal or sworn complaints and informal or unsworn complaints. Again, the Charter requires that the enforcement director consider, review, process formal complaints, those that are sworn, but it provides discretion to the enforcement director whether to consider informal complaints. As a matter of general practice, we have not historically distinguished between formal and informal complaints. We have tended to consider all of them. Certainly the Commission understands that anonymous complaints can have every bit as much merit as a sworn complaint. But there are those instances in which we receive informal complaints where we can tell from the face of the complaint, whether that's an email from a complainant or a phone conversation, that some other body would be better equipped to deal with that particular complaint. And so we have implemented a process that we loosely call consultation and no further action. And what that means is that instead of adding that complaint to the docket and requiring investigators to analyze it, provide a report to me, a report that would eventually go to the executive director, in most cases, as the enforcement director, I interface directly with those complainants. If they reach out by email, I may respond by email. Occasionally, I have responded by phone if there are clarifications that I think would benefit the conversation between me and the complainants. Sometimes they reach out to us by phone, and so obviously we have that conversation over the phone. There are other instances where complainants have called and I've not been available, and so the front office would direct those calls to any of the investigators, and in particular, whoever might be on duty that day. But in short, if we know at the outset that the Ethics Commission is the wrong place for this particular informal complaint, we will do everything that we can to explain our jurisdiction to the complainant and then direct them to some other body that is better equipped to serve their interests. And since we started tracking this, as I've indicated in the report, we've received over the last 4 months or so at least 24 complaints that we have handled through this protocol, which means on average 6 fewer reports that staff are writing every month and that I and the executive director would ultimately have to review and process. If you look to some of the statistics that we've reported this year in reference, or this month rather, in reference to preliminary review, you'll see that we now have fewer than 50 complaints in preliminary review. And just as a reminder, that's the process whereby staff conducts a kind of triage to determine whether there are enough facts in the complaint, whether the complaint is colorable, whether it alleges violations within our jurisdiction. So we have fewer than 50 complaints now awaiting that triage. 70% of those complaints that have not yet been triaged we received in the last 6 months, and 40% of those complaints that are awaiting triage we received within the last 6 weeks. We certainly endeavor to diminish the time that it takes us to get through that triage even further. The goal that the division has set for itself is to ensure that triage is provided within a 6-week period for all complaints that come in, and that's the goal that we are working toward throughout the course of this fiscal year. If you look at the statistics regarding open investigations, you'll see, again, that we have approximately twice as many complaints now under investigation as we do awaiting triage. Half of the complaints that are being investigated are in the campaign finance context, which again, I think, given the number of complaints, or rather, given that much of the enforcement work that the commission does is driven by complaint, it may make sense that there are a considerable number of complaints in the campaign finance context, because that's an arena in which the public is often paying close attention, and individuals are motivated to file complaints in that area. Among the 90-odd complaints that are under investigation, 2/3 are 2 years old or younger. So the majority of the complaints are within the last 2 years. It is the goal of the division to resolve all investigations within a 2-year period at most. So again, that is like the 6-week period for triaging complaints. 2 years is the max that we would hope to resolve investigations. That is a goal that we're moving toward. As a reminder from data that we presented in August, it is sort of an industry average. Whether that's the right benchmark is a separate question, but it is sort of the industry average that the time that passes between alleged misconduct and the resolution of a particular matter among several of our peer agencies is approximately 2.3, 2.4 years. So we hope to diminish the amount of time that it takes us, and we will be coming back to you in the future, obviously, with additional methods that we'll be employing in order to accomplish that. And then finally, quickly on the status of accounts before the Bureau of Delinquent Revenue. You saw in the report this month that we were unable to provide an update in time for meeting materials to have been finalized. We did subsequently receive that update from the Bureau. And just a couple items of note for your benefit would be that the Bureau, as to Mr. Chris Jackson, is preparing wage garnishment, which they intend to serve. I believe they will be serving that on Mr. Jackson's payroll office and not directly upon Mr. Jackson, but I don't 100% know the procedure there. And then as to Ms. Sweet, you will remember from prior meetings that we had been for a period optimistic about some settlement negotiations. Ms. Sweet has since stopped communicating with the Bureau's legal department, and so they are having instead to pursue an entry of default judgment against her. And then maybe lastly, another highlight would be that the Bureau has mailed an intention to file a lawsuit against the Arlo Smith Committee there at the bottom of that particular table for you. And then lastly, the Commission's Fines Collection Officer has referred 6 additional accounts to the Bureau, and we expect to see those additional accounts reflected in future updates.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Pierce from commissioners? Public comment?
Commissioners, Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Government. And if I heard correctly, a complaint's filed, and we, on average, are going to do 2.3 to 2.4 years to come to a conclusion. I've served in the last 11 elections as a poll inspector, and I know that elections happen much quickly than every 2 years. So we're talking about having complaints that just drag on and drag on and drag on and drag on. In fact, I kind of referenced this earlier. If you look on page 3 of this document, you will see there the referral date for Chris Jackson, July 2013, 7 years ago. Another one for Chris Jackson, September 2016, 4 years ago. Committee to elect Norman for supervisor, our present Board of Supervisors president, May 2015, 5 years ago, and it's still sitting here. Elizabeth Urbano, March 2016. Lynette Sweet was just mentioned, December 2016. So basically, all it does is it's kind of like a Plinko board where it kind of, you drop one in one end and it pushes another one out the other end, and nothing ever happens. And I'll tell you, this is exactly what happened to the problem with former supervisor just lost his name, who was in a similar circumstance, and former executive director let this same thing go on till it got to the point where they couldn't actually do anything to him, and he only settled it because he was up for re-election and wanted it off the newspaper headlines. So it's kind of basically, in fact, your own president called him dishonest in the newspapers. I'll bring that with me the next time. So basically, what you do is shuffle papers. You make a list, you push people in one end, they bump off. It's like that game on Price is Right, where you push the little blocks and they drop off the end, and you wait until you get the 5 blocks that are the price of the prize before you win it. That's basically what you do with all of these things. And very frankly, why shouldn't people cheat the city when they know that the only people who are watching them are you? And you all fit under what I call the Thomas Aquinas rule. Thomas Aquinas teaches that willful ignorance of what one ought to know is a mortal sin. And boy, are you sinners.
Just for the record, those are collection matters. Those judgments were secured long ago, but getting the money out of the pockets is a longer legal process. Thank you for that.
Can I just ask
Commissioner Lee?
clarification, because the speaker had alleged that one of the items involving a current supervisor, I don't think that's the same Norman, right? This is
That's correct, Commissioner Lee.
I just want to put on record that we're not, this is not
I believe that's right. Mr. Hartz made a reference to an account
Norman.
with BDR that
exactly
refers
Norman,
to
but that's not
the
Norman.
committee to elect Norman. That's correct.
That's
That
why I
was,
just want to really make that clear.
that's correct. Thank you.
All right. Any other further public comment? Okay. Agenda item number 10, staff overview, presentation, and discussion of Ethics Commission budget proposal for fiscal year 2021.
Commissioners, I would draw your attention to item number 10, the memo that we've provided. Gayatri Teikendil, who is our Deputy Director and Chief Programs Officer, is also joining me. She is our instrumental, she's my instrumental co-pilot in making sure that we are providing full information and analysis for you in the budget process. So Gayatri's here for any questions as well. I just wanted to highlight a few things from this agenda item and the reason it is on today's agenda. I think you may have recalled at a recent meeting I indicated that city budgets are due to the Mayor's Office of Budget and Policy on February the 21st. There is also an ordinance that was approved by the Board of Supervisors this past year, which is really upping the city's game in terms of public engagement about city budget preparation and wanting to move towards much more public awareness and meaningful engagement in discussing budgets by city departments. For us, fortunately, we have a regular commission meeting. We wanted to make sure that we were able to put on this agenda for your discussion and input and the public's discussion and input the recommendations that we have developed at the staff level for what we anticipate are our needs for the FY21 budget process. And so other departments will be doing that over the course of the next several weeks, but the mayor's office this last week has asked all departments in the city to do this no later than February 14th. It's also important that since the commission's next meeting is February 21st, we wanted to make sure you all had the opportunity to see the budget and comment on it before it was simply submitted the morning of your next meeting. So that is why the information is provided to you here. We will be continuing to refine this document, and I'll speak in a few minutes later about, again, responding to some of the budget instructions that the mayor issued for departments this year. There has been a direction issued from the mayor's office that all departments produce cuts for this budget year of 3.5% in FY21, and that begins July 1st of this year, and then another 3.5% for the following year. The report that you have at the back shows what those figures would be for our department, and that is what we will be providing more detail to over the course of the next month as we meet with the mayor's office about the impact of those cuts were they imposed on the commission. First and foremost, as has been our practice at the commission since my tenure, it is important for me and your staff to bring to you what we have as a real world assessment of what it is, what we believe it takes in the coming budget year to do the job and the mandate that we've been asked to do directly by the voters when they created the commission, as that duty has expanded over the years with increasing opportunity, but also increasing demands of legislation and new programs. And so as we've taken a look over the last year, the staff in the office assessing where we've come from over the past several years, we've put together a budget proposal that would result in about a 15% increase over our FY20 base operating budget of roughly $4.5 million. This is a process that's really building on a strategic foundation that started in 2016 when I first joined the commission. The commission embraced a strategic budget document at the time to focus on very specific goals. And first and foremost, of course, were organizational efficiencies, making sure that we had the structure in place and the tools and approaches in place so that we could better serve the mission that we have and better accomplish the goals that we had established in the charter and in other provisions of law. Obviously, we also, as we've spent time talking about, effective enforcement. We've worked to strengthen our enforcement program through additional resources and new structures and new processes to clarify and strengthen that area so that we have proactive, thorough, fair, and timely enforcement and case resolution. We've also been focused very much over the last couple of years with bringing on Gayatri, having been a FUSE fellow, an executive fellow in the mayor's office several years ago, to being our deputy director, working to really develop an expanded team in our engagement and compliance work, because we know that over time the Commission has historically done a very good job of assisting people to understand campaign finance laws, and we have not spent historically, in my judgment, as much time really reaching out to city officials and employees on ethics issues, helping with statements of economic interest and filing, so that city officials are comfortable that they know the rules of the road. And that's something we've been really working to build and have had some success doing that with the work that has now been led through Gayatri's team. But we know that the stakeholder base that we have is much broader than the folks that we are usually in contact with. There is a broad world out there, and part of our budget last year and this year really is trying to focus on broadening the impact of our work. We have to get outside of our own four corners of our office to really help people with the information that we have to understand the disclosures that are required of city officials, why they're important, how they can use them, and how they can use them to be better engaged and informed participants in democracy, in our elections, and in city governance. Through that, we've obviously had also a strengthened policy focus by creating a policy unit several years ago and staffing that. So bringing that forward to where we are in FY21, a couple of basic points that I think are relevant to our budget discussion. As a small department, we have 24 full-time equivalencies or staff positions. We have currently 4 vacancies, and they're scattered around the office. Audits, 1 in enforcement, 1 in our technology division, and yes, and the other in policy. How can I forget? But we are a small office. 87% roughly of our budget is salaries and benefits. We have a very thin resourced operation otherwise. We were very happy over the last couple of years to have a training budget established, really for the first time, a meaningful training budget of $30,000 for our staff. It used to be $4,000. But we know that in order to support, to help develop and retain our staff, who are terrific, we really need to keep investing in them. So that's something that we have been able to do and been able to really take advantage of, and we look forward to continuing to do that. Since 2016, by the time all these positions are filled, we'll have roughly 2/3 of our staff who are recently hired in the last couple of years, last 2 or 3 years. And so that, again, speaks to the need to continue to develop and invest for the long term the skills and the talents that folks are using in their work and bringing to their work. Page 3 of the memo gives you the overview of what the current structure of the commission staffing looks like in terms of our programmatic breakdown. And this leads as a segue into the areas of our specific budget request in this year's document that's in front of you. You can see the divisions that we have, and each of them, under the blue boxes on page 3 of the memo, highlight, or they're blue on if you have a color printout, or they're gray if you don't. But each of the darkened boxes show the policy, the divisions of our work, and then the various functions that are attended to within those programmatic areas. One of the things you'll note is at the bottom of the very first column is some items in bold: budget, performance reporting, office policies and payroll, HR administration, recruitment and hiring, staff, training and development. These are functions that are near and dear, very near and very dear to my heart and to that of our deputy director. You can also see that those are also assignments that are currently under our deputy director, who's in charge of all of our program areas: campaign finance, running the lobbying program, running the economic interest program, training, materials, outreach, web development, web content rather. So one of the things that we have looked at very critically, self-critically over the last year is how do we adapt our budget and our operations to make sure that we are applying the right kind of resources in the right way to do the work that is necessary to do as a city department. And one of the conclusions we have reached is that we can no longer use the model of absorbing these functions within the roles of the executive director and the deputy director. These are ongoing, necessary, and really critical functions that require specialized skill and assistance. And we have not staffed ourselves at that level in my tenure, and I think before I arrived as well, that was also the case, because our first goal has been first and foremost to make sure we were assessing the needs for direct services and direct support for the work that we do on our core mission. And what we've realized over time is that we are compromising our ability to do that effectively by not having the appropriate resources across the board, across the bench, to provide these kinds of services. We've been delayed in being able to get our positions filled. We are delayed when my time is not able to be devoted to the enforcement team's support and getting cases through as quickly. We've been delayed in getting our education and training programs up to the level that we know we want to and that we can with the resources and talent that we have on staff to be able to develop an educational support program for folks around the city. So this is one piece that we have identified, is that we are asking this year, we're proposing a director of HR, finance, and operations that would be a manager level to help corral those functions, focus those functions, and really leverage that work much more effectively and efficiently to get to help us make sure that we're able to get our core work done as well in other areas. Separately and related to this, we also have been building a lot of you see it every month when we have presentations by the staff about our data dashboards and the technology we've been using to put all this data together in a digital way where people can access it in the way they want, when they want, and in a way that they can understand it and find it meaningful. We've been doing a very helpful job with support of the Committee on Information Technologies funding over the years to go from a paper environment to a digital environment. One of the things that we will be stopped dead in our tracks doing is being able to deliver on the dashboards that need to be created for the data that's going to be digitized, and the outreach to city officials, to the public, to communities around the city, to know how that information is available and how they can use it. We have a lot of work that needs to be done that if we do not continue to fund a information systems engineer position that we received funding on a one-year limited term for in this current fiscal year, that work will be stalled and it won't happen. And that's at a time when I think we are perfectly poised to really make a difference out in the city, within the city and outside of the confines of city government, to really engage people with information. Thirdly, as we continue to realign and assess what work looks like and how work is evolving, one of the things that we will do is, as we did last year, we cannot be shy about saying that the nature of work is changing. We've asked in this budget, one other change would be to realign a policy position to reflect the work that we're doing across the board. There are many more complex policy projects that, for example, the Form 700 e-filing for all, or others that come along that we are developing, we are initiating with other city partners, and we are implementing. And that takes a very high level of coordination, negotiation, and constant collaboration. Those are things that are beyond the scope of positions that we envisioned when we first envisioned a policy unit. And so one of the things we're doing is to be candid about where we need to grow those positions to keep pace with the work that's being demanded and necessary to keep our policy agenda and our ability to implement systems and processes across the city done in an effective way. So that is one of the things that we've reflected in this budget as well. We have some other non-personnel specific items. I think I would draw your attention to the dollar amounts that we're talking about. These are probably not even rounding errors in some departments. We're talking such small numbers. But it is real resources, and we understand that a dollar spent on our work is a dollar not spent on other work. So we want to make sure that we're using all of our dollars as effectively and efficiently as possible. Two things that I would draw your attention to is we are initiating a request we're going to seek to initiate a request with the Controller's Office for about $30,000, just under $30,000, to provide some immediate work order support for controller functions in the procurement and purchasing area that we are not staffed to do. The Controller's Office has been very much of a help and assistant, gracious with their work and their staff over the years. They can no longer sustain that model. So we don't have funding to get that work done unless we establish a work order with the department, or the Controller's Department, to provide the services we've identified here. Again, this is part of being a grown-up office and a grown-up city department, but we don't have the resources for that, and we need to have that in the coming year, even as we staff up the other positions. The one last position that I would mention is something that we submitted a request for today, and that is to the Committee on Information Technology. This is on, I think, the last page or near page 8 of the memo. And this is an e-filing customer support specialist for this Form 700 e-filing for all project. It's a proposal that it would be a one-year limited term position, but we have identified through working with city departments, Department of Human Resources, with the bargaining units, that as Pat mentioned in his report, it's essential that we provide the technical support for designated filers and department staff to be able to implement this process soundly. And we are proposing a one-year limited term position to help us get through that transition so that we can provide that level, that technical support and service it's going to be necessary, because we don't currently have the resources to make that support happen. But it is something that we are all committed to and recognize the importance of. One last thing I do want to, again, come back to, because it is important. This is a budget request that we're proposing because we believe this speaks to absolutely essential needs that we have to do our work. Not having this work, we will be forced to identify areas of things that we simply have to stop doing, and that's something that we need to be in conversation about internally, and can certainly raise with you as we know more. But with 87% of our staff, of our funding staffing, inevitably cuts will eat into our staffing resources. And it is through our staffing that we help achieve the work that we're needing to do on behalf of San Franciscans. The mayor has been very clear in issuing budget instructions about the priorities that we know exist in San Francisco. There are desperate needs for dealing with homelessness, with dealing with clean streets. We also know that the mayor has been very committed to accountable and transparent government and making sure that we've got a top-notch workforce doing the work as effectively and as strongly as possible to support accountable and transparent government. And so our work, even though we are not in a position to provide beds for people who need them, or to provide housing, or to maybe clean streets we can do on an occasional weekend, but our work is different. Our work is to support the city's workforce in making sure that our decision-making and our work is of integrity so that the public trusts our work, and that, in fact, our work is supporting equity throughout the city because decisions are being made on the merits and not because of other reasons that speak to self-interest or other dealings that we all find improper. So I think there is alignment very much with our priorities in what we in our conversations with the mayor's office. We're looking forward to the opportunity to talk with the mayor's team about that. It is also the case that come February 21st, the mayor's office, the system that budgets are entered into in order to submit them, are restrictive. There will be a dollar amount that will be permitted to be entered. And at this point, my guess, it is not the dollar amount that we are requesting in this proposal. But that said, that is the reality of our budget process every year. It's, in my judgment, our job as your staff to make sure we're identifying absolutely critical needs. We do not play a game of fluffing our budget in the hope that we get half of it. We'll make trade-offs if we have to, but we want to be really clear about what the need is. And if we are in a position where we have to not be able to secure the resources we know we need, then we need to be very, very clear with ourselves, with the public, and with elected officials and others what we will not be able to do. So with that, I want to, if Gayatri has anything to add, I'm happy to have her add any comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have for us at this time.
Commissioners? I would say that I think the commission is part of the city family, but it's also an independent agency chartered by the voters, and understand that the constraints that are facing the city and that under which it has to operate. But we also have a public trust, I think, as you noted, Director Pelham, to uphold, and with a mandate that was just recently approved by voters to implement, and that we need the resources to be able to do that, to be effective. And I think that the proposal here, an increase of 15.5%, it seems like a big number, but in the large scheme of things, I think the staff has been the same size for the last 5 years. Yeah, 2 to 3 years. And yet the work has expanded, and as Mr. Pierce had just outlined to us, and we heard public comment, it's taking 2+ years, to get through an investigation. And that's, I think, a function of resources. If there's only so many hours in the day and so many cases that someone can handle. So whatever we can do from here to help support you and to emphasize the importance of funding and supporting the commission, at this really critical juncture, please let us know what we can do to do that. And I think that the work that Stephen Massey is leading and with Tyler on creating dashboards that make the data accessible and understandable and searchable is a critical piece of making the government and campaign finance accountable and transparent to the voters of San Francisco. And I think that the one-year funding that we received from the COIT program, it gave us a good start. But in the absence of additional funding through this budget proposal, I think that will grind to a halt, and that the price to be paid, will be by the people of San Francisco, because they won't have access to the information, and that the Form 700 e-filing rollout, it could go well, or it could be a debacle. But I think that the prudent thing to do is to prepare for support to help 3,500 people navigate a very new system, and so that it goes smoothly, and so that everything will work as intended. So I think from my position, I would hope that the mayor's office would consider our request in good faith, and please let us know how we can do to help support your efforts in that discussion. Any other comments or questions? Public comment?
Commissioners, Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government. As I said, I've been following this and attending meetings of this commission since about a decade or more ago. And I have to say that under former Executive Director John St. Croix, he went, I think it was 3 or 4 years, and each year asked for a 0% increase. And I'll be honest with you, I thought that was very appropriate because they weren't doing anything anyway, and giving them more money to do nothing seemed like an idiotic proposition. So at least that was the one thing I found Mr. St. Croix to be honest about. When Ms. Pellin came in, I really had heard some good things about what she had done in Los Angeles. And they asked for a nice budget increase, and I had the highest of hopes for what they could do. And basically here we are years later, and again, it's rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I heard that you have 24 staff, and you were bemoaning the fact that, we have so few people. But do you know, with this number you're looking at here, that's an average of $164,000 per person. How many citizens of San Francisco make anywhere near that kind of pay and benefits? And you've got 24 of them. Except I'm sure there are certain people who get a lot more than others. And again, when are you going to ever come here, and any of you commissioners, tell the citizens of San Francisco exactly something that you have done that has made this place a more ethical city? Nothing I've seen. It's like the Sunshine Ordinance. All these years, and you have never sided with the complainant in one single case. I've got 36. But what about all the hundreds of other people who brought things before you, and every single time you side with the city? And that's what we're paying for. We're paying for a bunch of meat puppets who I very honestly think somebody up there had a discussion with Ms. Calvillo prior to that meeting. And you can shake your heads no, but I'll remind you, $164,000 per person. And you still can't get the job done. It still takes you 2.5 years to process a complaint. I mean, I've been looking at these reports for years, and the only thing you need to do each month is change the numbers. They all pretty much say the same thing in the same order in the same way. Every agenda is item by item the same agenda. So what the hell do you do with all that money?
Thank you. Agenda item number 11, discussion of Executive Director's report and update of various programmatic and operational highlights of Ethics Commission staff activities since the Commission's previous monthly meeting.
Thank you, Chair Chu. Just very briefly, one of the highlights I wanted to note is that I'm happy to note that the Commission has been selected for participation in this year's San Francisco Fellows program. And what that means is we've got a group of, I think, is 4 young individuals who are within 5 years of having received their college degree, who are going to be giving their service to the city as employees for the next year. And as part of that process, they are going to be working with departments on various projects. Our project is going to be working directly with Gayatri Taikandil and our engagement and compliance team in putting together some materials that we have not been able to put together and that we can use in our outreach and translation services as well. And so I just wanted to draw your attention to that. We'll be having them start January 22nd, so that's coming right up. But we're delighted that we've got that energy and support coming on board very shortly. There was also a question that you had last month for an update on behested payments reporting. And so what I wanted to do is we collected the data and listed it in attachment, summarized it in the attachment to the Executive Director's report to highlight for you the reports that have been filed, disclosures that have been filed pursuant to government section 3.610B of the San Francisco Campaign and Governmental Conduct Code for behested payment disclosures in calendar year 2019, and then also section 114.5 behested payment disclosures. This information is also on our website, but it is intended to show where the information is now available on our website, where it can be found under our disclosure tab, and then you can go down to the data sets. Some people may call them databases, but the data sets that contain all the information that's been disclosed. And from there can actually link to Excel spreadsheets, and you can play with the data to your heart's content. But this is a summary of the reports that we've seen filed under these 2 sections. So we didn't have any particular comment about it. We just wanted to provide it to you as responsive to your request from last month. And if there are further questions, or if you'd like us to take a deeper dive in this or other similar information that may be online, we'd be happy to do that going forward. But just wanted to highlight that information for you. I think that is the summary of my report for this month, unless you have any other questions.
Any other questions from commissioners? Public comment? No public comment. Agenda item number 12, discussion and possible action on items for future meetings. Anything from commissioners? Okay, public comment on agenda item number 12? No. Agenda item number 13, additional opportunity for public comment on matters appearing or not appearing on the agenda pursuant to Ethics Commission Bylaws, Article 7, Section 2.
Commissioners Ray Hartz, Director of San Francisco Open Government, and as much as you would like to think, or like the public to think, that I'm just sort of a malcontent who comes here to cause problems, yada, 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 I was very honest with every board and commission meeting I went. I walked in and I said, my purpose of being here is to ensure that members of the public have a full right to participate and comment upon the activities of this body and its meetings. And I also have a second purpose, and that is to ensure that any member of the public who needs access to public records to support his or her efforts to improve government, that they should be getting those records without hassle. As you see, I have over 3 dozen determinations by the task force regarding either public comment or access to public records. And I see before me 5 people who I sort of stepped back from or late last year. I don't know whether you remember, but I came in at one of the meetings, I think it was November, and I made a public comment, which was kind of typical of what I've done so far today. And then I thought to myself, I looked up and I thought, none of these people were here in my experience. So I went away for a few months. And I came back and I thought, maybe there'll be a change. You know, hope springs eternal. But there isn't. You are all appointees, political appointees, of the very bodies you are supposed to maintain ethics of. One of you works for the mayor, one of you works for the board of supervisors, one of you works for the controller, one of you works for the city attorney, and I can't remember the last one. But you basically are policemen of the people who pay you, the people who put you on this board and keep you on this board. How could anybody who is a reasonable person expect to see any different from you than what we have? You're not honest people. You're not honest people because you will sit there and let this city government do whatever it wants, and you won't do a damn thing. And as I said, I'm sorry I didn't do my 150-word summaries, but I will next time, because I intend to come back here and call you out. Hilary Mantel wrote a series of books about Thomas Cromwell, the Chancellor of former King Henry VIII of England. And the last one was called Bring Up the Bodies. And boy, have you got a ton of bodies to bring up.
Thank you. I would just note for the record that commissioners appointed to the San Francisco Ethics Commission are not compensated.
Who said that?
Agenda item, let's see, a motion to adjourn?
Second.
So moved, and we are adjourned. Thank you.